Oh. G'day everyone, Gregg here from Fishblade Films, and welcome back to the BNSF Berwick Subdivision. Well, trees, they strike fear into the hearts of newbies like me, scenery challenged people. But you've got to have them. And as in my last upcoming video I did say, we'd be delving into Seafoam trees, or Superfoam trees, as that's a brand name. Seafoam is the product, and as you can see, we've done a few here, and they've turned out pretty darn good, I must say. There are pros and cons to them. They're not that cheap, I don't think, especially to get them down here. As I said in the other video, they are alive, or they were a live plant, so they have to go through all the customs and checking for bugs and all that sort of stuff, so they're not cheap. And but they are very super detailed with the limbs and all that sort of thing. They're a little bit samey, because they're all roughly the same size, give or take, and all the trunks are roughly the same size. So what I've tried to do is to make the trees a little bit more individual. So like a lot of people I see on YouTube with Seafoam trees, they do them in like a production line thing. And that's fine if you want to do heaps and do like a forest or something like that. But I'm doing a different take, and I'm trying to, let's make sure that I do have the road here for this train. Do we have a green stick around the corner? I can't see the bloody signal. No, we don't. Goodness gracious. Almost a tragedy, trying to do two things at once. So I'm trying to make them a little bit more individual and probably more of an Australian feel on trees, not as bushy as some of you up there in America and possibly the East Coast and all that sort of thing. So without further ado, I'll stop this train and let's get into making some Seafoam trees. The first thing we need to do is to shape the tree and remove any branches that we don't want. Anything like that you can just remove and use again for another tree. Even these small little pieces make really good bushes, so don't throw anything away. And make sure you leave enough trunk to stick in the ground. The next thing is to remove these tiny seed pods. You need a pair of tweezers, and I use a magnifying glass as well. If you can, try and pull the seed pods down the trunk rather than just out. I've broken a few limbs off trying to pull them straight out, so if you can, either pull them down a little bit and they'll just come straight off. The next thing you'll need to do is, depending on the type of tree you want to make, is to straighten the trunk. Now, I've seen many different ways to do this, by soaking them in your glue or water and letting them hang, or using a soldering iron, which I didn't think would work, but believe it or not, it does. Just place the iron on the top of the bend and just push the tree down slightly when you feel the wood starting to get soft. Up in the ends where there's foliage, don't be worried about burning it, as it doesn't seem to hurt it at all. And same thing, be gentle and you'll be able to straighten the tree out, and there you go. Perfectly straight tree with a soldering iron. Now once again, it depends on your preference, but now we're going to paint the trunks and the limbs of the trees, just roughly. Some of the trees you could actually leave, because we have trees down here in Australia that have a really white creamy sort of bark. But I'm painting these with just a couple of shades of brown. Pick a colour you like and don't be very fussy with it. What I'm also doing is going over with a second coat of a darker colour, just to get a little bit more variance in the actual colour of the trunk. But once again, totally up to you. When it came to making these trees for me, personally I found the hardest thing was to pick which flock and leaves to use. Flock and leaves. So what I'm using is 3 types of leaves from Knock and some coarse turf from Woodland Scenic that will build out the tree. And for the smaller trees, I'm actually using static grass, some 2mm and 4mm from War World Scenics. The next big decision you have to make is, how am I going to attach the foliage to the trees? Well, you could use the old PVA glue, but that dries glossy and it's not very flexible. It's not recommended. Mod Podge is a matte medium, which is an artist's glue sealer, and a lot of people recommend that, but what the Supertree people actually recommend is to use a matte medium. Now, matte mediums are crazy things. They're like the glue and the sealer that artists use, and then they're more flexible. So we're going to try both, the matte medium and Mod Podge. We're trying Mod Podge first, and I must say when you smell this, it does smell a lot like PVA, where the matte medium or the liquid matte medium smells completely different. And we'll be using 1 part of Mod Podge to 5 parts of water. Now, as I said, we're not doing a production line today. We're trying to do more individual trees. So I'm trying not to get the glue on the trunk. I'm keeping it on the foliage. And I'm going to sprinkle on some Woodland Scenics coarse turf, just to bulk the tree up a little bit. You'll also notice that there are some small leaves that are in with the coarse turf. And I've left them in there, and they'll just come out as individual bits on the trees, just to add a little bit more variance and texture. Now, as for a preference between Mod Podge and liquid matte medium, I'd probably slightly lean towards the matte medium, but the Mod Podge does keep the trees a little bit stiffer for the smaller ones, and maybe for the bigger ones I probably would lean towards matte medium. The next tree I'm using knock leaves first, and then going to add a little bit of coarse turf just to bulk the tree out a little bit. To add extra foliage and to seal the tree once you've finished, spray it with your diluted mixture of Mod Podge or the glue of your choice. This time we're trying for a more sparse look, so we're going with some coarse turf first just to bulk the tree out, but not too much. And then we're going to apply some knock leaves and spraying in between so that gives the leaves something to stick to. These leaves are knock spring leaves, which I got in a pack of 4 different colours. I think it's a great idea for a newbie to learn which colours to use, and it gives you a good variety without having too much left over. And then once again a quick spray of diluted glue to seal in the goodness. Adding the different coloured leaves to the tree gives it a sense of depth and also helps create shadows. This tree is getting a 3-step process. First, we bulk the tree out with some Woodland Scenics coarse turf. Then we apply some knock dark green leaves to give it that real tree look. Then apply a light spray of diluted glue and add some spring leaves to simulate new growth. Well, that's all hunky-dory, I hear you say, but what do we do with all these offcuts? Well, you stick them in the glue, you grab your static grass applicator, and you chuck some static grass on them. This works incredibly well, better than what I would have expected, and turns out fantastic for these small little bushes. This little bush here would be about a bit more than 1 inch square. You can see how the grass coating's on there. You have to be a little bit patient with it. But you can see it transform into a great little bush. That thing's about 3 centimetres tall, a bit over 1 inch. This time we're going to try some static grass first and then sprinkle some leaves over the top. Now I'm not applying too much static grass here because I need some surface area for the leaves to stick to. So we'll probably leave that. That's probably enough. And now we'll try sprinkling on some leaves. Now I haven't sprayed it because I just want a few leaves to stick on the parts that are glued. I could spray it with another glue solution and put more leaves on it, but I'm just trying to get that, budding leaf look. Since that was a success, I thought, I wonder how small I could actually go.
Here's a real small piece of seafoam tree with some static grass being applied. This is 2mm spring static grass from Warwell Scenics. And you can see it really does go on well and brings this tiny little branch to life. So it'd be a lovely little shrub if you could plant it delicately enough. Well, let's have a look at what we've got. This first one was mostly leaves. Second one, flock with a few leaves on top. See the spring leaves standing out there. Looks quite nice. This one here is just all leaves with no coarse turf. I don't particularly like that. I think you need the coarse turf to build the tree up a little bit. But still looks okay. This one here is coarse turf with 2 lots of leaves, the dark leaves and some of the spring leaves on top. This one also is coarse turf with a few dark leaves and then quite a few more of the spring leaves. Now this one, what is this one? I forget what this one, this is roughly the same I think, but maybe not as many spring leaves. But what you do notice is because I rolled the foliage around in the glue, I didn't get any glue on the trunks or the branches, so none of the leaves have stuck to that. And I think that makes a big difference. But once again, I'm not making 100 at a time. Here are some of the offcuts. This first one has some coarse turf. Second one, some 2mm static grass. That's bushed out very nicely there. This one here, just a little bit of coarse turf, no static grass on that one. You know, sort of a dying tree, you could say. Just a small amount of static grass on that one. And that one actually has just some knock dark green leaves on it. This is the largest tree that I have tried so far, and once again it got a coating of coarse turf first, then a spray and some dark knock leaves, and then to top it all off with some spring leaves to give it some new growth and to give the tree some shadows. And you can also see there, because the tree was rolled around in the glue and not completely dunked, no leaves or foliage have glued to the trunk or most of the limbs. The next thing is to try a few on the layout and see how they look. For a first attempt, I think they came out pretty good. They are quite fragile, so you have to be careful. But definitely worth the effort.
Well, there you go. That's my take on trees. What do I think about Seafoam trees, super trees? Well, amazing detail in the branches, in the form of the trees. The little natural foliage, I guess, is a perfect spot for your foliage and your leaves to stick to. They're not cheap, especially down here. Not cheap at all. So, you know, by the time you buy the trees, the glue, the foliage, the leaves, all that, still cheaper obviously than, let's say, the scenic, Woodland Scenics plastic tree kits, and obviously look better than them. Downside, of course, all the trunks are roughly the same size. So, you know, there's a little bit of variance, but not much. And you can do what the amazing Luke Towan does, an Aussie guy who builds amazingly realistic dioramas. Look him up. He's a bit of a freak, how some of the stuff he does. He's an incredible model, but he takes the fine foliage off these seafoam trees and puts them on bigger twigs and makes amazing looking trees. But you know, he spent hours and hours of trees, so there you go. But overall, for my first attempt, I think they look fantastic. Are they the be-all, end-all? Absolutely not. You need a mixture of these and other trees. So Bob, Long Shadow's model trees, you're not out of business, brother. These are fantastic, but they're not the answer to everything. So, but yeah, I'm pretty impressed with them and how easy it is to do. So I hope you enjoyed the little tips from my point of view anyway. As I say, a lot of people would do them in more production style line. But I feel to get more individuality out of the trees, you need to take your time with them and do it that way. So anyway, it's been fun, and now I just have to work out how to put them on the layout. Using the cardboard scenery technique that I do, you really have to go and drill into the plaster to get some footage for the trees. So anyway, but yeah, they're good. Yeah, not bad at all. So we'll see you on the next update, and we'll plant a few of these and see how they look around the layout. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Hooroo for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.